Welcome to another, or the one episode that we offer each other in that remembrance of what has been given us as a Course in Miracles, right? As that tool that, we are willing to use now, and a device as a message from out of time that reminds us that we can use miracles, and we are here to be miracle minded and to be miracle workers and to offer to ourselves and so to the entire world miracles all the time, and to come into a certainty of purpose, a certainty of what our experience is as the heart of hearts, as that love that we receive from God Himself. And we are becoming willing now, or we feel the necessity to share that with all of ourselves, with the entire world, with our entire mind. And as we left it, we are using also those notes from the Urtext as the scribe of A Course in Miracles, Helen Schackman, has received it initially, and which is the unedited version, right? And so we are always adding on some perspectives, bringing that in the context of where we find ourselves in the mind training, in that acknowledging and accepting the lesson for the day. And so we will also elaborate today in making that demonstration, continuing what is not part of the edited version of the course, but is quite extensively discussed and given as an information in the Urtext. And those are recognitions about sexuality. And so Jesus started out talking about that already here under that 42nd Miracles principle that we started to share in the last episode, which tells us that a major contribution of miracles is their strength in releasing us, in releasing you from your false sense of isolation, deprivation, and lack. That release of a false sense of isolation, deprivation, and lack, under which the human mind suffers in also staying just in a perspective of understanding sexuality as something that has something to do with, or only has something to do with the body, with body feelings, with body exchange, with further on reproduction. And of course, we have to bring that up to an understanding and a level in the mind in which we realize without any doubt that this is about experiencing the light, the singular light, the creative light, and that obviously there has been a kind of misunderstanding or wrong or false or failed interpretation of literally a gift that we received and in this conception of existence in time-space. And so there's a lot to say, and I will not read and share all the passages with you, but I will definitely make and include and make emphasis of parts that have a connection with the mind training and making it very clearly that a trained mind will see, of course, even that part of its own consciousness experience in a completely new way. But why not starting out coming from above, from our full recognition of what has been given us, and using this incredible lesson 267, that my heart is beating in the peace of God, and just receiving for a moment that message and that direction, that surrounding me is all the life that God created in His love. That is what has been given me. That is what I have received. That is what I can offer now. That is what I can share. That is what I want to share. All the life that God created in His love. And it continues further saying it calls to us in every heartbeat and in every breath, in every action and in every thought. Builds peace, fills my heart and floods my body with the purpose of forgiveness. Now my mind is healed. And further down, he talks about who we are. And this is really a declaration that you should follow as Jesus has declared himself to the world by saying, I am a messenger of God. So unless you are coming up and acknowledge that you are a messenger of God, you want to be on the line and align your mind and accept the instructions and the offers given from out of time, how you can change, how you can arrive at a clarity and an acceptance to be a messenger of God and directed by His voice and sustained by Him in love and held forever quiet and at peace within His loving arms. So we are cared, right? We are cared. We are in His loving arms, and we literally dissolve there with our own self-concept, our own ideas about who we are, what the world is, what anybody is who comes into our mind. Each heartbeat calls His name, and everyone is answered by His voice, assuring me I am at home in Him. Thank you. So that heartbeat that is in resonance with universal frequency, literally, in which the energy in which we are joined as one mind, as one soul, as one self. It is there. It is the heart of love created. It is there and only there that we can be at home in that experience, in that sharing. And I will include also the perspective of the lesson that will be offered us on the next day, the following day, 268. Let all things be exactly as they are. And that is something that every human being has to learn, because it needs a recognition what things are as they are. It's not about saying to leave the things in their meaning, but really to let them be as what they are in our whole mind. And yet, of course, it is a directive also to just get out of this wheel of giving everything the meaning, defending it in the meaning of the past, continuing to judge, continuing to categorize and condemn, continuing to take part of one side and crucifying and condemning the other side. And all these psychological traits that the ego has developed over much of our being in a human form. And here we pray to God and ask Him for that help in the expression, let me not be your critic, Lord, and judge against you. Let me not attempt to interfere with your creation and distort it into sickly forms. And this might be a very important information already, what we will learn and look at when we go in a moment into the notes of the Urtext at the beginning and look at these ideas presented by Jesus about sexuality. Not distorted into sickly form, because obviously this is what we did. Let me be willing to withdraw my wishes from its unity and thus to let it be as you created it. This is what we learn, to let things be exactly as they are, to let it be as God created it. And he follows up then saying, for thus will I be able to recognize myself, my true self, as you created me. In love was I created, and in love will I remain forever. In love was I created, and in love will I remain forever. What a declaration, isn't it? There is certainty once we recognize that we are love and we will remain love, and there's nothing beyond or besides love that could ever give us an identity with which we could feel a value, a self-value, or be content with it. We will not value what is valueless, is the teaching of lesson 133. And that sentence, that recognition, we are willing to bring along and bring with us into all these perceptual, objective situations as they present themselves in our human experience, no matter what. Sexuality is just one of the experience. Why has sexuality been left or kept and defended in fear, or as an expression of fear? And when it is basically a disappearance in the light of creative mind. He finishes up the lesson by saying, only reality is free of pain, only reality is free of loss, only reality is wholly safe. And it is only this we seek today. Only, you know. Yeah, and if only reality is wholly safe and free of pain and free of loss, where then can you see any grievance or hold a grievance or use an experience? It's just basically a human experience. I'm talking about what we will go into an understanding of sexuality in the consciousness and how to use that. To use that as not to follow up and guide our mind towards another grievance or another feeling of loss or another feeling to be not free and literally being caged or being possessed, because all these ideas are discussed already previously. We brought that in very shortly also, that idea of possession. And of course, that idea is an underlying ego idea of what the experience of sexuality could serve for. And of course, man as genetically being just a praying animal, you could say, the reproduction genetics or the reproductive potential is, of course, very strongly fixed in the conceptual mind. And it is only the miracle and the light experience that shows us that it is not about denial and it is not about favoring anything. It is about transforming what the previous or still carried along experience and understanding is onto a higher level, we could say, onto an understanding in the Holy Spirit itself, in that mind that is right-minded. And through a right-minded use of whatever is part of the human experience, of course, we come to a point in which we realize very simply that there's a way that is way faster. We can have an experience of union in the mind, of an experience of love that goes beyond some neurophysiological or hormonal results, and goes into a whole love that cannot be changed or extinguished and is never lost, that just opens up the mind to a greater experience of that love of God Himself. And so to use any forms as we have basically just used it very recently, because before, let's just say 100 years or so, sexuality was basically only understood as a reproductive act. And yeah, I mean, maybe with some exceptions, if we look into the Roman culture 2000 years ago, but maybe in different societies also. But in the Christian society, it became kind of a devil's work and expression, and it can only be used that it makes sense in the way of reproducing the human condition, like to have children, the reproductive act. And so that we have arrived at completely different perspectives of if it comes into the mind, and instead of repressing it and putting it into the niche and the shoes of the devil, to say, okay, what can I do? This is in my mind, and to ask for help and to ask for a miracle guidance, and that miracle will be very personally and will show very personally that anything of the human experience can be used in such a way, let's say in a fully constructive way, of not just having a perspective of, yes, this is also just transitory, temporary, and will pass, as it does, of course, or it comes and goes in waves. But really to use such idea in order to strengthen that experience of the peace of God, of that heart of hearts, of that one heart. And the more that experience is settled, of course, the more we lose interest in the form how it is practiced. And so here I give you kind of a perspective where Jesus is leading and guiding us in these words that he gave very early on to Helen Schackman. We are still here in the, if we correlate that with the edited version in chapter 1 in the first section. And sure, from the psychological standpoint, these ideas and some new perspectives, some guidance in that is we are also, as I said before, in a very new understanding of what the meaning of it is. And so clarity as it is offered in those early parts and have not made it into the edited version of the course as we know it mostly, is from my standpoint, in my opinion, very valuable because once we see new and different perspectives about the theme, sexuality, we start also questioning it in a different way. We start thinking about it, and so we start inviting a new way of perception, a new way of experiencing ourselves. And that is really where the whole approximation with the Holy Spirit comes about and follows. So here he says, continuing where we left it the last time, the following is in relation to question about sex. The one more river, underquote, is related to sex. You might even explain it to him, he talks here to Helen, to tell to Bill, as a tidal wave. A term which he will understand, you won't. Both of you are involved with unconscious distortions above the miracle level, which are producing a dense cover of miracle impulses, which makes it hard for them to reach consciousness. So he starts teaching here, look, we're gonna approach that and we look at it already from the perspective that we are looking at miracle impulses. And now we wanna basically question that and discover that on which level or in which direction those miracles impulses are seen, experienced, and used. So here he says that unconscious distortions are producing a dense cover over miracles impulses. Sex and miracles are both ways of relating. So this is what I tried to express before also, in that new way of using sex in a way of experiencing a unity, a oneness of mind, experiencing the peace in the heart of hearts. That is a new way of relating. So both are here on the same level. Sex and miracles are both ways of relating. The nature of any interpersonal relationship is limited. The nature is clear. Every human mind knows that. An interpersonal relationship is limited or defined by what you want it to do, which is why you want it in the first place. So that would be now also in what do you want it to do with what you wanted to have it be in the first place, miracles and so sexuality. Relating is a way of achieving an outcome. We are going for a goal, right? There is a purpose set in how The mind thinks and then proceeds and wants to experience itself. Indiscriminate sexual impulses, so indiscriminate sexual impulses, resemble indiscriminate miracle impulses in that both result in body image misperceptions. So here we have already a directive given where he is going to leading us. Both will result in body image misperceptions, as well as indiscriminate sexual impulses, as well as indiscriminate miracle impulses, which are resembled. The first is an expression of an indiscriminate attempt to reach communion through the body. An indiscriminate sexual impulse attempts to reach communion through the body. And this involves not only the improper self-identification, but also disrespect for the individuality of others. Interesting perspective, isn't it? But of course, this is what we all have to look at in that idea of sharing it without bringing it into a level of light experience. An improper self-identification, a disrespect for individuality of others. Self-control is not the whole answer to this problem. As I said, we're not going to deny it. We're not going to make it the devil's work and needs to be rejected in order to demonstrate that we would be religious or spiritual. So self-control is also not the whole answer to this problem, though I am by no means discouraging its use. It must be understood, however, that the underlying mechanism must be uprooted. And this is really the main theme, that why we are also sharing that we are learning that how the mind operates on the conceptual level, how mind in separation, not knowing and recognizing its true value, is using sexuality, is really a very, very superficial experience. He calls it then in the next paragraph shallow roots. And we are here to really look at those roots and to see those roots are anyway shallow. Now, Jesus was talking about that they will be torn out and thrown into the fire. So we are actually responsible for that transformation, and see that this uprooting that is necessary is really what the correction is that the miracles brings about. So again, however, the underlying mechanism must be uprooted. A word you both should understand well enough by now not to regard it as frightening. Here it is. All shallow roots have to be uprooted. All shallow roots have to be uprooted because they are not deep enough to sustain you. They are not deep enough, brother, to sustain us. What is our sustenance? Lesson 50 was teaching us already. It is the love of God that sustains us. And so anything that is not really in itself opening up and is used for experiencing the love of God is shallow and is therefore brought or subjected to an action of uprooting, let's say. The illusion that shallow roots can be deepened and thus made to hold is one of the corollaries on which the reversal of the golden rule referred to twice before is balanced. Right? We had that with the golden rule just the other day, I think 2 episodes before, and it was the expression, you are asked to behave towards others as you would have them behave towards you. And this means that the perception of both must be accurate since the golden rule is the order for appropriate behavior. Appropriate behavior depends on lack of level confusion. So we're no longer than making a level confusion between what the value is of the human experience and what the value is of our spiritual experience. But the fact is, okay, I continue here. As these false underpinnings are uprooted or given up, is the other expression. You put that in parentheses. Giving up is another expression of uprooting, yeah? Letting go, giving up. Equilibrium is experienced as unstable. But the fact is that nothing is less stable than an orientation which is upside down. So an orientation also of how to use sexuality, for example. Anything that holds it this way is hardly conducive to greater stability. The whole danger of defenses lies in their propensity to hold misperceptions rigidly in place. The whole danger of defenses lies in their propensity to hold misperceptions rigidly in place. So it's all about to have misperceptions, being corrected, being brought to a new and true perception, to a vision, right? This is why rigidity is regarded as stability by those who are off the mark. And then he goes into, I'm gonna go further down, all actions which stem from reverse thinking are literally the behavioral expressions of those who know not what they do. Okay, I will here jump over some paragraphs and continue with, he also goes then here into the sexual aspects were naturally touched off in both of you because of the sex and aggression confusion. So it talks here about a confusion of sexuality and aggression. Your mutual sexual attraction was also shared. The error lay in the word triumphant. This had the battle connotation because neither of you was respecting all of the other. There is a great deal more to a person than intellect and genitals. Wow. I submit, after a long interruption, that if a mind, a soul, is in valid relationship with God, it can't be upside down. While he talks about Czech and the other very eminent methodologists have abundant validity in favor of reliability because they've lost sight of the end and are concentrating on the means. That was the example used. Now he goes into a different example. Remember the story about the artist who kept devoting himself to inventing better and better ways of sharpening pencils. He never created anything, but he had the sharpest pencil in town. Sex is often utilized on behalf of very similar errors, right? It's you do not create anything, but you have the sharpest pencil in town. Hostility, triumph, vengeance, self-debasement, and all sorts of expressions of the lack of love are often very clearly seen in the accompanying fantasies. Okay, once more. Hostility, triumph, vengeance, self-debasement, and all sorts of expressions of the lack of love are often very clearly seen in the accompanying fantasies. But it is a profound error to imagine that, because these fantasies are so frequent or occur so reliably that this implies validity. Remember that while validity implies reliability, the relationship is not reversible. You can be wholly reliable and entirely wrong. Now, validity is, those are kind of terms, validity and reliability, that reliability is you believe in it, right? You give it value in your belief system and you trust in it, and if it's an expression of validity, then you already say this is the truth, I hold that completely valid. You're not going to shake it up anymore. You're not going to question it or doubt it in any way. While validity implies reliability, the relationship is not reversible. While a reliable test does measure something, what use is the test unless you discover what the something is? And if validity is more important than reliability and is also necessarily implied by it, why not concentrate on validity and let reliability fall naturally into place? Intellect may be a displacement upward, like it's this movement, this distancing upward, dislocating itself upward. But sex can be a displacement outward. So it makes here a clear difference between intellect and sex. A displacement upward, but sex can be a displacement outward. How can man come close, he puts it under quotes, to others through the parts of him which are really invisible? Or we would say, as we used it also in the last episode, really not there. Right? The word invisible means cannot be seen or perceived. Cannot be seen or perceived. What cannot be perceived is hardly the right means for improving perception. So, you see, this is the correction of perception. This is what is offered us through A Course in Miracles, throughout the mind training. We are learning in our own perceiving the meaningless or the meanings that we have given everything from the past, in the past, now in a new understanding that as long as I want to bring that perception to a true perception, to a vision, to a truly seeing it what it is, so that I can let all things be as they are. Yeah, it cannot be that I use means that literally offer me an invisible product, something that cannot be seen or perceived. The confusion of miracle impulses, so that is, of course, then that refers and has been brought into the edited version in the section 7 of chapter 1. The confusion of miracle impulses with sexual impulses. So we are talking here about a confusion and a distortion, which we will hear. That confusion is a major source, and here it is, of perceptual distortion, because it induces rather than straightening out the basic level confusion, which underlies all those who seek happiness with the instruments of the world. And what an expression, isn't it? What a content. Because everybody in the entire world is looking for happiness, is seeking happiness. And who knows really that seeking happiness cannot be brought to a goal, to a successful experience, let's say, through the instruments of the world. This is what perceptual distortion has underneath. Underlying is this necessity and motivation in the mind to seek for happiness, but still use the world and the worldly appearances and reflections as means. This is what we are now learning through miracle mindedness, to no longer refer or let the mind relate to the past, to what the world is reflecting in our mind. If we are relating now to a new frequency, to that represents the love of God, that is truly sustaining us. Now he brings here a wonderful example in it. A desert is a desert is a desert. You can do anything you want in it, but you cannot change it from what it is. It is a desert. It still lacks water, which is why it is a desert. Bring up the dream about the bluebird. While Helen was looking for this dream, she came across another. The message was to bring both as an excellent example of how extremely good Helen has become over the intervening 25 years of sharpening pencils. Note the essential content hasn't changed, it's just better written. The thing to do with a desert is, and here is the solution offered. We're not going to stay in the problem and just discuss over and over the problem. It's more than enough to know that the meaning that has been given to sexuality was a perceptual distortion, was the confusion of true miracle impulses into a limited way of thought form. And now he offers us the action of mind, what to do with that. And the expression in the short sentence is simply, the thing to do with a desert is to leave the desert, to leave that conceptual frame of limitation, of littleness, right? That has been given meaning throughout all times of how we used sex. Either nowadays it is then used for excessive pleasure, né? And that's also just a distortion of perception. Né? So we leave the desert. That is what we really do. And from here he follows up with the next miracles principle, 43 in the edited version. Miracles arise from a miraculous state of mind. Miracles arise from a miraculous state of mind. By being one, this state of mind goes out to anyone, even without the awareness of the miracle worker himself. The impersonal nature of miracles is because atonement itself is one, uniting all creations with their creator. Yeah, let's remember that miracles arise from a miraculous state of mind. So we are not stopping until in whatever we relate with in our thought forms, we realize to be in a miraculous state of mind. This state of mind goes out to anyone being one, even without the awareness of what I would think, well, oh, here it is now, the miracle. You know? It doesn't even need that awareness. It communicates by itself. It extends itself to itself. The impersonal nature of miracles is because atonement itself is one, uniting all creations by their creator. Well, my dear brother, thank you for listening to this, and we will take a leave for today, and blessings. Think about these ideas as presented. If you have a chance and possibility to access this unedited version of the notes that Jesus gave to Helen Schackman, this unedited Urtext version of A Course in Miracles, you will find many, many gems that might help you personally in bringing ideas into a very practical and personal context in your own experience of transformation and awakening from this dream in on that way home to source, to that remembrance, who you are, who we are as one. And so remembering, yes, it is the heart of God that is beating in us. It is the peace of God in which our heart beats, and it is only that experience of perfect wholeness, oneness, that makes us happy and at peace and in love and in a sureness and certainty of creative power that has been given us, and we are now extending and sharing with all of ourselves. Thank you, thank you. I love you with all my heart, and see you everywhere. You have the most wonderful day, okay? Bye-bye.